Continue with the Strait of Hormuz. Last time I talked with the Iranian side, they don't have the right to charge the toll, right? And then now let's talk about the U.S. and the Israel side. First of all, let me see. I think I actually agree with the Iranian proposals reportedly that they're saying that let's get there, put this nuclear issues later to a later time. Let's fix the homeless issues. And I think from international peace and the international trade perspective, I think that's really the priority. After all, I mean, even the U.S. nowadays can recognize, can acknowledge that the Iranian nuclear bomb did not have an immediate imminent threat to the U.S. and maybe a bigger danger to the Israel. But that's what that's what I believe that Israel is like act like a little Jerry, but it always be the big Tom. The Tom is the biggest cat in the world, right? But Israel actually, through one way or the other, you could say that internally we have a lot of Israeli lobbyist who is only loyal to Israel, much more than so to the U.S. Okay, so that's one side. Another side is that we have, the Israeli government. They know their number one. They know their goal. Number two, they know their means. Okay, so that makes them very powerful. Okay, they know they unlike Trump, who doesn't know what he's doing other than listening to Netanyahu. Netanyahu knows all along what he wants. What is best for according to his view, what is best for Israel. Actually, that's not because what Netanyahu is doing is actually oftentimes is actually damaging the country's long-term interest. But let me just, for now, let's just say that he knows what he wants and he knows how to get there by using Trump. You know, so in the modern geopolitics, there are really just two reality that we must keep in mind. And number one is that U.S. is the biggest cat in the world. Okay, all the others, none of the others can be even close. For one way or the other, like Russia is much weaker, right? Russia's economy is probably one province GDP in China, but Russia is willing. Okay, China, on the other hand, is kind of not willing. They're more reluctant to get into any military conflict. I would say, in that sense, I praise China because China has been doing something to to promote global peace because that's to their best interest. They want to have a one belt and road, and they want to have a trade. A significant part of GDP depends on that. That's why, at the end of U.S. and Israeli bombing, China is the first one, I believe, that offers some compensations to the Iranian families who lost their kids. So I think that's a decent thing to do. I wish more countries like the U.S. would be doing that, but you can never bet on that. But basically, here that's one thing that the U.S. is the biggest cat. Another thing is that the world, a lot of trouble is caused by Israel. I'm not afraid of saying that. Israel is a big troublemakers. They always say, you may always say that, that's it's the second global geopolitics reality. A lot of people don't never even recognize that. Let me give you a perfect example that Gaddafi in Libya, who died in I think like early 21st century. But he died. He didn't even until his death. He did not recognize why he was died, why he was killed. You know, because he did everything that the U.S. is asking for him to do. He gave up all the weapons, nuclear or non-nuclear. He just basically tell the U.S. They invited U.S. and the U.K. Gaddafi never realized that UK doesn't hardly matter. I have nothing against the UK. I'm just saying the reality that Israel is far more important than UK. But anyway, sure enough, that Gaddafi is strongly against Israel. He never realized that, without having a good relationship with Israel, his risk of losing his life, losing the country, is never decreased, even if he follows everything that the US asked him to do. So that's the second hidden geopolitics reality that a lot of people did never recognize, that we have to keep that in mind. So, but anyway, so looking at the US and the Israel side, first of all, the biggest guilty part, is that they launched unilateral attack on Iran. And then even it's like somebody says that it's like killing the Pope on the Easter Sunday, because they, killing the supreme leader of the Iranian regime. And even after the Iranians showed willingness to move on to surrounding some of the nuclear weapons, that this showed the interest in doing that. And 2 days later, they had an airstrike. Okay, so that's how ridiculous it is. That's how dangerous Israel can be to the world. So that's one thing. So from the very beginning, if you say auditing everything that we happened, the reason we had a crisis in homes, it's because the preemptive strike, mostly by Israel and the US. Okay, so to that extent, I fully believe that the Trump administration should be held accountable for that. However, the reality is that nobody's gonna enforce that. Okay, I wish that someday we will have international criminal law to to have the teeth to punish some countries and the individuals, but we are far from that day yet. So that's one thing. If you look at the beginning of the crisis, U.S. is solely responsible. Trump administration is solely responsible because even they admit that the Iranian weapon does not form immediate threat. So the preemptive strike, the self-defense, is just the bullshit. Okay, it doesn't hold up. So that's one thing. However, this time after Iranian bloc started charging the tolls for all the ships passing by, um, Trump administration decided to do something dramatically, but you have to say that they are doing that quite legally. Why? Because they're saying that we're not blocking the homes. We're not doing that because that's illegal according to UNCLOS. Remember that I told you that the UN Convention of on the law on the seas. That I call it UNCLOS because basically it says UNCLOS means open, right? So UNCLOS, they're not violating UNCLOS. Why? Because they are saying, the US are saying that we're not blocking the homes. Instead, we're blocking all the ships to the Iranian port. So that actually, if you follow the international law, there's uh, one book manual called the San Remo's manual. It's basically it's not an international treaty, but it's a collection of all the international laws on the seas. That's illegal. If it's illegal to block the homes, but it's illegal to block all the ship going to Iran. Okay, so that's kind of a like irony, but it's the law is trying to balance two goals. Number one, you accepting the reality that you are at war. Number two, try to reduce the collateral damage, is try to reduce the suffering of the civilians. Okay, so for that reason, used to be the case. Why do we have a San Remo manual? Because in the older days, a few big countries, they are pulling They're saying that if you don't listen to me, I'm gonna block you. So they have a partial or selective blockade. But that's a San Remo manual basically says no, you can't do that. If you want to block it everybody. You can't just the selective. So to by that extent, block all the ships, even for the American ships that need to go into the Iran, they will be blocked. Although we haven't seen any case like that, but the logic is the same. That you cannot selectively block the ships. You have to block everything go into Iran port. So that's the idea. So this time, I think that Trump administration, at least, they showed some respect to the international law. However, the big problem is the collateral damage, because a lot of neutral parties they need to have a trade with the Iran, and also by blocking although they have they did not block on the homes, but they block all the ships going. So because Iran is basically, we all know Iran is one of the gas stations in the world. So if you block all the traffic to that gas station, you basically make a lot of car out of gas. So to that way, that's a collateral damage. That's why the UN maritime chief was blaming the US and Israel for doing that. So let's get this fact straight.